There was once a young man who fell in love with the truth. He travelled the world searching for her. He climbed to the top of mountains and then deep into valleys. Eventually, he found her in a forest in a clearing. She was old and stooped, long grey hair, bosoms easing gently towards the earth. But her eyes were sharp and intelligent. He asked her if he could stay with her. He wanted to study with her. He said he'd help her. He'd collect her wood for the fire. He'd bring water from the well. He'd dig her garden. He'd harvest her crops. He just wanted to be with her. And she agreed. So he stayed for quite a while. But one day he woke up with a great longing to have a child. So he went to her and he asked her if she would relieve him of his promise. She thought for a moment, and then she said, "Yes, you can go. But on one condition, you must tell them that I'm young and that I'm beautiful." Nobody ever knew how old the Cailleach was, and she'd been living for a long time in a small little cottage just at the edge of the village, and she'd been there as long as people could remember, and they were very curious as to her age. Now, the only one who had the authority to ask such a personal question was the parish priest. So they told him to go and visit her and find out. He didn't go on his own. He brought his assistant, the deacon, with him. He went into the house and asked her straight out, "How old are you?" "Well," she said, "to tell you the truth, I can't remember. But I do know that on my birthday every year I killed a cow. And after I'd eaten it, I'd throw the bones up there to the attic. So if you want to find out how old I am, go on up to the attic and count them." Now the old priest, the legs weren't so good. He's full of arthritis in his knees from all the praying and the genuflecting. So he turned to the young deacon and said, "Go on up there, you're a young fellow, go up there and count them bones." So the deacon climbed up into the attic and began counting and counting and counting and counting. And as far as we know, he's still up there counting. You living nowadays love wealth and crave more. But we who lived before you put people above riches and lived well on the time plains we crossed. Then people gave without fuss, did not sell themselves, nor were lost in claims of what they gave while hugging their gold. Now each thing's bought and sold, and people boast how much their giving cost. I lived the summer of youth. I felt autumn's first taint, and now the wintry truth that steals at first as a faint chill on me, and on everyone has come. I enjoyed my youth, and am glad it was so. Youth briefly blazes, and play or no play, the cloak with time's increases would wear out anyway. And there was a well below the sea, and the 9 hazels of wisdom grew there, and their leaves and their blossoms broke within the same hour and fell in a shower that raised a purple wave. And the 5 salmon that were waiting there ate the nuts, so that their scales glowed brighter with their magic. And then they swam in the 7 rivers of wisdom that sprang up from the well. If someone were to eat one of those salmon, they would devour all the knowledge of the world. That was the story, how it was told in 100 firelit homes. The smuggling in of myth. Misha ere, Shiname nan chalyak bera. More madlor, mearuk kuchalan kroga. More manair, matlan hain a yil wahir. Misha ere, uignig me, nan chalyak bera. There was once a man called Ochi Mac Muigbadan, and he had 5 sons. And they were off one day, they were out hunting. And after a good day, they turned to go home. But on the way home, didn't they get lost? No matter what little boreen they went, they discovered they were going in the wrong direction. They went one way, then another, and they just couldn't find their way home at all. So it was getting dark now. So they decided they'd stay where they were for the night. They were fine, strong men, well used to being in the woods in the dark on their own. So they lit a fire, and they skinned what they'd caught, and they cooked it over the fire. And after filling their bellies with a fine meal, they got thirsty. So the youngest one, Fiacra, was told to go and get water from the well. So off he headed looking for the well. He heard the sound of water, and eventually he found it. But if he did, who was there before him? You've guessed it, the Cailleach. Every joint of her body, from the top of her head to the soles of her feet, were as black as coal. Her hair was a bristly mane like the tail of a wild horse. Her teeth were huge and green as the moss on an oak tree. Her eyes were dark and smoky. Her nose was pockmarked and pussy. Her midriff was bare, filthy, knotted and spotted. Her shins were gnarled and twisted and as broad as spades. She was fossa, and the smell, rotten eggs wouldn't describe it. Well, he said. Well, she said. Are you the guardian of the well? I am, she said. Will you permit me to take some water? I will, she said, if you give me a kiss. wiping the drool from her lips. "Ugh," he said, "I wouldn't kiss you if my life depended on it." And off he went, back to his brothers, until the last one was Neil, the youngest. He came to the well. The Cailleach was there waiting for him. "Give me water, woman," he said. "I will if you give me a kiss," she said. "I'll do that and more," he said. And he did. And he lay down beside her. And afterwards, when it was all over, he looked at her. She was completely changed. She was magnificent from head to toe. Her skin was white and smooth. Her eyes were large and queenly. Her teeth were pearly. Her lips were red as rowan berries. "You take many forms, woman," he said. "What's your name?" "My name is Flahulachas, sovereignty." "Oh," he said, "that's very interesting. Which would you rather," she said, "me to be beautiful by day or Uafasach, ugly by night, or the reverse, magnificent by night and ugly by day?" Oh, that presented him with a dilemma. He would have given anything to go back to his brothers with this beautiful creature on his arm. Oh, the men would be jealous of him. But then the thought of having to sleep with that creature at night, oh. And then he thought, sure, at night all cats are grey. But then at the thought of waking up looking at her, he says, "I don't know, I can't decide, you decide." "Ha," she said, "you have broken the spell. Vime fuyasa. I was under a spell to remain in this condition, neither one thing or another, until I met a man who knows the secret of what a woman wants. And you have discovered it. What a woman wants is choice. And because you have given me a choice, I'll be beautiful to you forever. And the seed of your seed will live in Ireland for many generations." And so it was. Neil, the youngest son, he became in history known as Neil Nay Gielach, Neil of the 9 hostages. And they do say that Niall of the 9 hostages was the forefather of thousands and thousands of men who live in the northwest of Ireland to this very day.